There was a gate, but it was not the kind of gate I would have expected. I would have thought there was door and hinges. It was an opening. I call it a gate, but it was an opening in the wall. And the light and the love and the life were originating from the other side of that wall. And I was on the outside of it. And it was beautiful. The gate was uh, it had precious stones uh, made up in the gate. There was shimmering colors. It was like a royal gate, uh, intricate and ornate, about 50 feet high, maybe about 50 feet wide. I didn't measure it. I'm just saying more or less that way. A big opening. And there was no door there, but it looked to me like somehow the substance of pearl had been liquefied and smeared over all of it on the inside from start to finish and over the beginning of it as well, the opening on the sides. And then this pearl substance with gems inside of it solidified. And there was this gate. And somehow I knew that there was 12 of them. But the two angels that had escorted me from the hospital all the way here, they brought me to the entrance in this walkway. And they were guiding me, and they were filled with joy and excitement. And they led me to this exact spot at this exact time. So, uh, anyway, I don't know. Above the gate, there were some gold letters that shimmered, and they seemed to be arched, and they appeared to me like they were written right to left. I had no idea what that word meant. And down at my feet, when I saw that, amber stones were laid in the walkway, and they were like jewels of amber. And they were, again, right to left, letters that I didn't understand. I knew they had to be important. I've never understood what those letters mean. I just don't know. I don't mind saying I don't know. I don't mind telling people I don't understand certain things, but I do like to do deep dives on things until I do understand. But the walkway glowed. It had a transparent look to it. When I got to the, oh my gosh, when I got to the main street, the street, they really are made of gold. But I guess as a child, if I had heard the streets of gold when I was a kid, I think I must have thought metal on top of the pavement. And when I got there, I remember I'm 19. I didn't have a lot of religious training, not with my background. I don't remember hearing about heaven. Maybe I did, but I can't remember ever hearing about heaven or anything about heaven, except that that's a good place to go when you die. It's what I thought. But when I saw the street, it was glass of gold. It looked more like glass, but it was golden glass, but see through, not an inch or three. It was feet. I don't know, 12 feet, 20 feet thick, with glass of gold. And I don't know. I'm not sure that's exactly what we'll see when we get there, but to me, it was breathtaking. Literally, I just held my breath looking at. Oh, I see.
And then I stepped into the light, and I was assailed by a land of liquid love. I cannot tell it any other way. I entered heaven, the current heaven. And there, Jesus was smiling, and my eyes adjusted. I was absolutely ecstatically happy. Everything done away with. I mean, all my problems and my baggage gone. All my stupidity erased. I was in heaven, in the land of liquid love, and it embraces you. It's the very presence of God, and the light in heaven comes from God Himself. I mean, the Father. I mean, it's at the throne room. I'll explain that later. It's really hard to explain the doctrine of the Trinity, but it is a true doctrine. And so when I was actually entered into what I call, in my terminology here, I call it a field of reunion, because what I saw was when Jesus entered out of it, all these kids came running up to him, and he literally just picked up one little guy and tossed him in the air and caught him, and he got on the ground with them, and he was letting them roll all over him. He's playing with them. I remember him looking up at me, smiling. He said, "Just look around." And then I was like, this is Jesus romping with kids. And I always imagine in the Bible, that's what he was doing when the disciples said, let's get rid of these kids. He says, "Let the little children come unto me." I don't think it was a holy thing. I think he was probably playing with them, romping with them. And that's how he is. And that song, "Jesus Loved the Little Children," is true. Amazing. And he said it himself, "Let the little children come unto me and forbid them not." And so when Isaiah 55, when words go out of the Lord's mouth, he will perform that. So a lot of children are in heaven. Young children are in heaven.
Right, and you saw amazing things with children. I mean, even some that had been sick. Now, tell me about the story of the man who saw his father, but he didn't expect him to be there.
Yeah, there was this guy that came out of the corridor, and he entered in there, and he saw his dad coming toward him, and he couldn't understand it. But it's like, this is eternal time. This is a different spiritual dimension, totally. But it's the ultimate reality as well. I mean, it's no other way to say it. And I knew intuitively that he was a Christian. I knew that he witnessed to his dad, and he got in a big fight, and he said, "I'll never talk to you again," and he didn't. And because his dad was verbally abusive to the kids, and especially him. And then I knew that his sisters and brothers were saying, "Dad's dying. He wants to talk to you," and he refused to go. He did. So he walks. Then he sees his dad, and as his dad, an older man, and it said, "Son, I want to thank you. I prayed the prayer on my deathbed. Thank you." They hugged, and all the hate, hurt, gone, just like that. Then they walked off together. And then everybody's about 30 years old, but when you see them, they look the same as you see them before when they left. But then they go back to that perfect form. I can't wait to get my new body.
Well, okay, wait, okay, but I have a question here, Brian. But I mean, how would that man be in heaven if he had not forgiven his father? Or was it just that he forgave his father, but he just didn't want to be around him so he wouldn't be verbally abused?
He didn't want to be verbally abused. He was hurt by him. And the Lord understands things better than we do. I leave it at that.
Okay.
And so, people go, "Why didn't he?" He most likely did.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that looking back on it, there was a lot of hurt. He didn't want to see his dad because of hurt, pain. And he tried to witness to his dad many times. He constantly rejected him. He said, "That's fine." And so I do believe he did forgive him. But the idea that I saw, what was transpiring, was the reconciliation. And how all that drained out of you. It's gone. And you come into your own. And then I saw other people entering, and they would see some of their relatives or somebody they know in heaven. They're Christians and believers, and they see and they welcome you there, and they go off to heaven together. And then what was the most amazing thing I saw was one parent or two parents, they enter into heaven one at a time or together, depends, and they've lost a child like through cancer at an early age. And they see their young child running up to them. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad." And so they pick them up and they have a reunion. And sometimes, I saw a woman who was before she was a Christian, had an abortion. And she felt traumatized by it and devastated by that experience and robbed. society will try to make you a hero, but the damage that abortion does mentally is not even discussed. It needs to be. But she saw this baby crawling to her. She goes, ah. And he stood up as a little kid, and it grew up to a young guy. He said, "Hi, Mom. No worries." They hugged each other. That was the baby she aborted, greeting her. "No worries. So it's okay." So it's almost like Jesus has it covered. And then she turned around and walked, and he turned into a little boy again. So she was holding his hand and walked into heaven. That affected me. It still does. I never seen reconciliation like that before.
And then didn't you also
Everything
see?
mended.
Didn't you also see like children, like a child that might have had a deformity?
Oh yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, they did and stuff. They're made whole, and they would see their parents or aunt or uncle who arrive, and they have their full features. Everything's made right.
Tell me what you saw with the Book of Life.
This was a game changer for me. I was moving toward, I thought I was going where I was supposed to go. I was moving toward this big opening, and I realized that when I get to the opening, that's going to be the city of heaven where my family would most likely be, where the ones that have died, and where Jesus would be in the throne and all that. So I started moving toward this massive pearl covered uh, opening, and there's this pearl covered book on a golden stand, like a lattice stand. And this was a book that was huge. It's like no book I've ever seen on Earth, even in all of the museums of Europe. This was bigger and better and more beautiful. There was an angel that moved and stopped right in front of me. I had two angels behind me, and we were moving, and then this angel that I hadn't hardly noticed, and he just stood, and actually he put his hand out like that, but not angrily, just put his hand out like that. And I was blocked, and I knew that somehow, some way, that my name needed to be in that book. And while I was looking at it, it opened by itself, and it's radiating light, and it's like rays that are coming out. And I knew, no one said it, but I knew this was the book of life. How did I know? Because information was being transferred from my spirit to God's spirit. And I was hearing things from angels, I was hearing things from God. Knowledge and truth goes right into the heart. That's the way I believe. That's what I believe I experienced. Bypassing my mind altogether, which is no wonder communication is so wonderful. Is you're communicating from heart to heart, spirit to spirit, instead of having to go through all the misunderstandings that can occur from people up here. Anyway, I opened the book, or the book was opened, and I looked down at the open book, and I saw a bunch of names, but all of the names were grayed out. We would say that because we know what that means. They were not legible, except for one, mine. There was my name, right to left, Dale Russell Black. And for a moment there, I was confused, and I thought, wow, I'd been kicked out of college twice for disciplinary reasons of a Christian college. A lot of people didn't think I was a Christian. Some people did, but a lot of people, even watching me now, if they knew me back then, they would. And I've been criticized. Oh, you're a fake Dale, because we remember you back then. But I have changed. I've changed from the inside out, and I take no credit for it again. Glory be to God. Through the blood of Jesus, I'm a different man. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are now new. I'm a new man. And that's the best I can say. But there I was looking down at my name, thinking, oh, my word, I guess I made it. And there was a date there next to my name, and I looked at that date and I thought, oh, they must have a different Dale Black. It must be because that's not my birth date. Oh, that's not me. And then the information came right here again. No, Dale, it's not your earthly birth date. It's the day you were created by God. It's your conception date. Well, that just changed, of course, as I've thought about that. That changed everything. Of course, in heaven, when you were given life, that's the day that your life starts. That's the day of conception. Interesting that Satan loves to bury that information, and that kind of gives us, doesn't it, a quick understanding of abortion, because in heaven the creation is what's important. My birth date is strangely January 1st, 1950. I was the first one born in my city of that halfway in the middle of last century. But that date wasn't even on that book. It was a different date. And it's the date that I was created. There was another date next to my name. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. This too is wrong. And I saw that date and I thought, what the? And here again, right back into my heart, really quickly, the information, no, Dale, that's the day you were born again. Remember? But anyway, I saw that new date in the book of life, and the angel said, Dale, this is the day you were given new life when you invited Jesus into your heart. You are eternal, and and you're born again, and you're saved, and that's why I could go into the city of heaven. But there was something else missing. No one said anything, but I thought, wait a minute. On Earth, we have a date of being born. We always have a date of dying. And obviously, I'm dead. How else could I be here? Obviously, I'm dead. But I don't see a date that would make sense to me that I died. It's no deal. There's no death date. Not in heaven. No one dies here. You're an eternal being. You live forever. By the way, Dale, when you get back to Earth, remind people they're not going to die spiritually. Their body will, if we're like everybody else in the generations before us, but their body will die, but their spirit will live on. You will either go to heaven or you will go to hell. According to Jesus, that's it.
We landed in this little area, which was on some grass. The grass was like just super soft and buoyancy. You walk on it and it springs back up. You couldn't smash it down if you tried to. You could probably sleep on it and have a great night's sleep if you were sleeping in heaven, but no one sleeps in heaven. There's no reason to. We don't get tired. So I landed in front of this, what I'll describe as a welcome center. And so it didn't have like welcome to heaven or flashing lights or anything like that. But we went inside this building, and this man behind this kind of a curved, ornate desk really had all kind of intricate carvings and everything in it. Said, "Welcome to heaven, Steve." He said, "Marzuka is going to be your guide, and he's going to show you everything in heaven that you need to see right now." So, the inside of this place was amazing. It had chandeliers that had big jewels, precious jewel stones as decoration, but those were like emitting light to light up the room in there. And on the walls, there was 4 different pictures that I saw. There was a mountain scene, a valley scene, a meadow scene, and best described as like a beach scene. And I didn't really pay much attention to those initially. They were just there. But it is kind of like I relate it to like you go into a travel center and you see pictures of the Eiffel Tower or Big Ben or the Colosseum, different things, sights to see and stuff like that. So that's kind of, I didn't realize that at the time, but later on, when I started visiting some of these places, I kind of started making the connection. Oh, those are places that, I'm going to.
And Jesus and I walked through heaven for 43 hours and 28 minutes is what I say of how long I was until I was back in my body. And as we walked through heaven, he showed me heaven. He shared with me things about it. He walked to where we went to. He showed me our house that we're going to live in. And he showed me in the backyard there were the horses and the little dogs were over in the field playing. And along the way, he talked to me and taught me and shared with me what he wanted me to share. He taught me about the Bible. He taught me how to understand it. He explained to me why and how it was written, why there were things in there that seemed to have different meanings or could be interpreted a different way or contradictions. He explained to me about creation, about when time began, about sin. I mean, everything. I'm going like, wow, why is he sharing all this with me? Why am I getting all this? I mean, I got an education like you couldn't believe. And we got to where our house was, and he showed me, and we were standing on the edge of the backyard. We have a pasture in the back, but there's trees and everything over in the end, and the dogs were out there playing and jumping around, and the two horses came running up again, trotting up. Only this time I was standing next to Jesus. And they didn't come up to me, they came up to him. And they came up and Shock and Nugget, and they kind of nuzzled them. And this has to be one of the coolest things, that Jesus was petting the nose of our horse. Mm. And I just thought, wow, this is surreal. I'm in heaven, and Jesus is petting our horses. He loves our horses, and they know him, and they know more than you know down here on earth. We wonder, they know a lot more than you understand. So I'm standing there talking, and he showed me the house and he explained everything. And then he explained to me how, as we're walking back some more, and we literally walked for 43 hours and 28 minutes Earth time. Now, I know there's no time in heaven, but I mean, 43 hours. There wasn't sleep. Nobody gets tired. I wasn't tired. I mean, he covered a lot, and I don't know how far we walked, but it was a long way. So as we're walking, and he's continuing to share with me and explain things, and he says, you understand that this is. He actually showed me the house. He says, this is not where you're going to spend all of eternity. And my heart sunk. I thought he was going to tell me, yeah, you're not going to be here. This is the route. But he explained it real quickly. He says, because as I've written in the Bible, I'm going to create a new heavens and a new earth when he comes back. And the old earth and the old heavens will pass away. So he's going to recreate everything. He's not going to renew this earth. He's not going to renew the heavens. He's going to create it all new.
The mansions are interesting because, and I'm not an architect, although my brother was, but there are what I call townships. When I was able to get through the wall, meet quite a few of my family. My uncle, who I didn't even know existed, was there. My father had a young brother born who died in childbirth. I never thought about him, but there he was, one of the first people I met. Anyway, but the townships, they looked colorful and small. They were happy, and together they made up this colossal little city. And each township was settled within what looked like kind of a park-like setting. And in the setting was fountains and lakes, streams, beautiful homes. different sizes, designs, but all harmonic. And I began to understand that there's some kind of a I've never learned to say this exactly right spiritually, but there's some kind of a reward system that God has for your home. And it has something to do with what you were called to do by God and what you did. And it's based on a curve that only God can control. But there were bigger homes, smaller homes, but nobody was jealous. There's no envy. But some people had bigger homes, and I wanted to know what that was all about. Would I have a small home? That's okay with me, Lord. It's okay. I'm just glad to be in heaven. The unity and the love is just spectacular. But anyway, there does seem to be some understanding of the dwellings that are tailored by God. They're flawless. They're inspired by God. My brother, the architect, God, the architect. Talk about incredible. And there was heavenly homes that were kind of familiar that I would see in uh, nice places, especially in Europe. I traveled around the world when I was a young 14-year-old. My family just loved traveling. That's part of why I became a pilot, I'm sure. But the residents were just gorgeous, and the neighborhoods are filled with vibrant gardens and fountain streams. We talked about gazebos. I don't think they're called gazebos, but they look like gazebos to me. Spaces that are designed for fellowship, designed for joy, and designed for peace. And I love birds now, uh, colorful birds. I just love birds. I like to show a bird my pilot's license. I just hang them. See, we're both aviators. I'm just joking there, but there are many types of animals. They roam freely and they work in harmony with the people. So it's just gorgeous. Uh, the landscape is gorgeous.
So Jesus was just walking through there, and we were walking together, and we passed some grand estates, I call them, and oh, no, Jesus says, "I go prepare a place for you." It's not like it says mansion. I can't remember the Greek word what it means right now, but it's like a grand estate. It's sort of, if you ever been to the Biltmore was 5,000 acres, but they had their own city, own town. The workers and people were all around them. And that's kind of the setup that I saw, was that people that you affected or affected you in Christ will be living near each other in these grand estates. And they're perfectly made for each individual. And some of the first ones I saw were off in the distance, and I never, it was just too far in the distance. But I knew who they were. They were the patriarchs and stuff. But I never got close to them.
I was stunned with the goodness of God. God cares about us so much that He knows our interests of our heart, of our life, of our mind, and He makes provision in heaven for that. Before I could even get over feeling the unbelievable grace of God, instantly I was in an apricot orchard. Yeah. I thought, what? And God said, just breathe the fragrance. And so I started breathing in this absolutely gorgeous, oh man, no apricots on earth are like those up in heaven. And there was just row after row of orchards. Now, I lived in Porterville, California for a time. We had groves and groves of orange trees. They were fragrant. You could smell those orange blossoms for miles. But nothing like this apricot orchard that was in heaven. And then God said to me, Randall, if you want to, you can take care of an orchard. For I let my children grow fruit in heaven so that they may harvest it for both the saints and for angels. Well, that kind of surprised me. Like, what? But he said, yes, you have a taste of husbandry and earth, but it really started here in heaven. Those apricot trees are my original design. They are copied when I made them on earth. And that's when I realized, wow, the scriptures are true. Everything has an origin in heaven, and here on earth there are copies. And so he said, go ahead and take a bite. So I took one bite of an apricot, and much to my astonishment, the tree instantly budded where I pulled the apricot off, and a brand new apricot flower burst out. And he said, son, there is no death in heaven. When you eat, the fruit is automatically replenished. And I thought, this is unbelievable. I felt really, really gracious that God was giving me this opportunity. I did see wheat fields growing up there too. I just glanced and saw them. I was in a social center. It's the best way I can describe it. And people were milling around, and there was a speaker giving a presentation. And God said, step a little closer. So I did. And then all of a sudden I realized it was a saint having a debate with about 150 people in his audience. Now, here is what is amazing. Heaven, you communicate to each other by your thoughts. Thought to thought is instant. It is absolutely perfect. You can't hide anything in heaven. Everything you think is instantly knowable by everybody around you, and especially by God Himself. You cannot hide anything. This is why heaven is a pure place. And this is why the Lord tells us, be holy as I am holy. Impure things cannot exist in heaven. You'd be instantly found out. You'd be terribly embarrassed to be in heaven because you'd just not fit in. So I was watching these people communicating, and they were sharing their thoughts with the speaker, but everything was orderly. It was not pell-mell. Everything was beautifully synchronized. And as the speaker kept going, a member of the audience would say, well, have you thought about this in their thought? And the speaker would automatically speak to the whole audience. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. And I said to God the Father, you knew that I got cheated out of my debate in Billings because my teammate got drunk and we forfeited the whole debate. And he said, yes, my son, that was a chief heartache. And I was sad when I saw that happen to you. But I am going to make it up to you in heaven.
It's the details of how much the Lord cares about us.
He didn't allow this to drop to the ground. He actually saw this whole thing, and he said, I will give Randall an opportunity to debate. But up here, debating is at a higher level than down on earth, but I will let Randall debate if that's what he wants to do. See, heaven is full of free choices, Janie. God's just not strictly constraining us. He gives us freedom to do whatever we want to do. He's only asking us to be pure and to be full of the love of God. We'll automatically want to do the best for each other if we are filled with God's love. God knows that. That's how heaven runs, because we're filled with the Father's love. So will we want to love Him and the dear Savior, Lord Jesus Christ, and each other. That's how I can say it, okay? I was shocked that God saw this incident, how I lost the debate through no fault of my own. It was promising. We were going to win the debate for our high school, and my teammate fouled out, and God was going to make it up to me. So I realized God is an incredible Father, and He cares. So I thought about that, and then God said, "Are you ready for another scene?" I said, "Yes." He took me out into this field, and the kids were playing. Young children were playing in this grass field. And he said, "I want you to have fun with the children out here." Now, I found out later, Janie, that when we were growing up and we missed certain opportunities as young tots, it affects the development of our being. Mine was actually stunted. I was not given any opportunity to play with any of the kids while I was growing up. And God saw all this, and He said, "I want you to go ahead and enjoy." So there were a group of kids that came running over to me, and we had fun. We had fun playing. Everything in heaven has a purpose. Nothing is without reason. And God knew that things in my heart, in my spirit, still needed to be adjusted, still needed to be fit for growing into all of God's purposes. And this was part of that.
So Marzuka and I had been doing a lot of walking around heaven. We did a lot of talking and a lot of looking, but we had come over this little horizon and kind of looked down this road, and we were kind of at the crest of this hill, and down below was this huge expanse of these buildings. And I don't know how to describe it maybe it was like a huge ranch or a huge place, but it was big. Okay, there's a lot of these buildings, and so we started walking closer. And on the sides of these buildings were horses, these beautiful carved horses into the side of the buildings. And some of the horses were running, some of them were like standing or grazing, some of them were it looks like a mother and a foal standing next to each other, and they were just all in different poses that you would typically see horses in. And I've never had a horse. I don't hang around horses, so this was like all new experience for me. But we went inside this one building, and inside were these stables, and these were big rooms. They were not just little bitty stalls. These were pretty big. These were 40 by 40, and they had these immaculate looking white horses. I mean, they were white from top of their ears to the back of their tail to their hooves. They were white. They were fairly large, but they were also swift and muscular. You could see them moving around, and you could see the muscles flexing in them as they moved. We walked through a row of these things, of these horse stables or stalls, and some of them were eating, some of them were being brushed out by angels that were taking care of them. Some of them were like snorting and pawing at the ground like they're like ready to bust out. And some of them were being fitted with a very light chain mail type of armor. And, Marzuka said, these are the Lord's war horses. And he said, the Lord has created them for one purpose, and there's for fighting the battle at the end times. And he said that the armor that they're being fitted with right now, he said it's mostly for show because you can't really hurt the horses. He said, I said, well, they were created for one thing. What's going to happen to them after the battle? And Marzuka said the Lord's going to give them to the people who served him. So people are going to be able to get these horses, and you just have to make sure you serve the Lord. I don't know if there's one for everybody, but I did see an awful lot of horses. I mean, I saw thousands and thousands and thousands of horses. They were all beautiful horses, and like I said, these were just all in one building, and then there's multiple buildings of all these horses. So we walked through this one building. We came out to this huge field, and there are tens or thousands or 30,000. I don't know how many horses. There were just a bunch of horses, and they were all doing these like military maneuvers. That's the best way for me to describe it, because it was very precision. It was very exact. The steps were right in order. They were being ridden by these angels. The angels had weapons on them. They had like Marzuka's sword. They had axes. They had bows and arrows. They had all kinds of stuff. You may think, well, bows and arrows, what kind of weapons are that? Well, so Marzuka showed me his sword, and he pulled it out of the sheath about 7 or 8 inches, and the edges do glow. And he said, this will cut through anything, So they're quite deadly weapons. I mean, they have a purpose, and the angels. Fortunately, the good angels have them. So, but anyway, at the very front of this massive group of horses, I saw Jesus sitting on a horse, big white horse, and he was directing them. He was giving them hand motions, and they were doing exactly what his hand motions wanted them to do. And so then we got to watch that for a little bit, and after we got through, we got to go walk back through the stable again. And Marzuka said, "I got something. I got a little treat for you." So when we first came in to the horse stables, Marzuka stopped at one of the stalls and talked to one of the angels. He actually went inside and started talking to the angel. The other angel kind of turned around and nodded his head at me, and I kind of nodded my head back to him. And so I didn't really know what was going on then, but on the way back through the stables again, Marzuka said, I got a surprise for you. So we got to the other end of it, and there were these 2 big horses that were standing there waiting for us. And Marzuka says, we're going to go for a ride. And so I said, now they had saddles on them, but it looked a little big. I'm not sure how to get on. And I said, so how do I get on this thing? And Marzuka said, just think yourself onto the horse. So I did. And I just kind of saw myself sitting on the horse. And next thing I know, I'm sitting on the horse. It didn't hurt. It was just, boom, I was there on the horse. And so we got to take these horses for a ride outside. And it was like the most amazing, incredible thing I think I've ever experienced, or it was just pretty wild, because I could almost like think to the horse what I wanted him to do, and it would do it. Like if I thought slow down or speed up, it would do just exactly that. Or if I kind of nodded my head one way or the other, we'd go in that direction. And it was pretty fun. We got to ride around the big field where all the other horses were doing their training.
Now, did you get any sense how close we are to the battle that will use these horses?
Well, when I was in the throne room, Jesus told me, he came down off his throne and he came and spoke to me. And he talked to me about a couple of things. But one of the things he said, you saw my war horses. And I said, yes, Lord, I did. He said, they're training for battle. And I said, so when is this battle going to happen? And his words were, very soon.
We came to this one particular place. I remember him smiling, Jesus smiling, and we entered into this big, huge building, long building, huge. How it defies laws of our physics, how it could stand. But we walked in it, and this was the wedding supper of the Lamb being prepared. People were in there who like to design and make things, and tapestry and quilts and angels. They're all decorating this place when I was there. And it was very busy and setting the tables for a lot of people. And so we walked from one end real. It was like we were walking slow, but we were here to a great distance in no time. And I just remember the tapestries, the coverings for the tables, the pillows. Okay, the tables were kind of low, you kind of recline at, and there it was really nice, beautiful, and everybody was busy, and all these people were gathered about doing this, that, and the other thing. And so there were a lot of ladies in there decorating. There were just a lot of ladies in there decorating, and they were having a great time, organizing this and putting there, and everybody got along. And there were a few guys there and people, and they were just they're decorating, and some people getting musical instruments ready to play, and all these things were getting ready. And so we just walked from one end. I was seeing all this stuff, and we got to the end of it, and we walked into what I call it the reception area. It's where everybody will be gathered out of the rapture, however you want to call it. They're going to be gathered in this meeting hall. It's where everybody gathers together. Then you enter a doorway and you go in. So we came in this doorway, went out into the reception area, and big area, and also there's little hallways going off in different places too. And I just saw it real briefly. Then we walked out of a side door, and we said it was time for me to go back.
I was before the throne of God himself in this area. Talk about awesome. Talk about staggering. It absolutely staggers you. And God hid himself from me. I was not allowed to see him at all. It was covered like with thick, dark cloud. Okay. And I saw the form on the throne, but I saw this incredibly beautiful rainbow surrounding the throne. And it had the most awesome living colors. And it started with deep purple right next to the throne. Now went to purple blue, and then blue, and then this indigo green color, beautiful green, went from green to yellow, and then from yellow to kind of an orange, and then orange to red, all of the colors of the rainbow. And then after the red, it gradually diffused into this soft golden color. But I heard this singing, this awesome, awesome singing. I know you're aware of Isaiah 6:6, where Isaiah gets caught up to the throne of God. But this is what I was hearing. And God asked me, he said, "What do you see next to the throne?" And I looked, and here were seraphim singing. And they were singing almost perfect worship to God. Now, I need to make a motion with my two hands to properly describe what I saw. But as the seraphim were going through the rainbow, part of them were going one direction and part of them were going another direction, but they would pass each other perfectly as they were going back and forth in the rainbow. And God said, "Son, would you like to join them?" And before I could even say yes, boom, instantly, I was in that rainbow with the seraphim. I have to say two things. It was incredibly hot, incredibly hot. It was the holiness of God, and it was in this incredible heat. It wasn't like hell. This is a totally different type of heat. This is purity beyond unbelievably. And also, God gave an anointing upon me. I could never have done this in a trillion years. But the Holy Spirit anointed me so I could join in singing with those seraphim. And he allowed me to do that for a minute and a half. I'm going to start to cry because that is truly profound. And it's one of the highest glories of heaven to hear that worship ascending to God the Father on his throne. And if you hear those seraphim, you'll melt down. Absolutely, you'll melt. So that, I think God had saved the very best to last.
And I mean, were they singing words? Were they just singing like just notes?
They were actually 16-part harmony.
Ooh, I am a musician, so I understand.
And they were perfectly in pitch with each other. And some of them were singing a counter melody to the other ones. It was an incredible tapestry of sound, and it was perfectly put together. I sang in the chorale, so I'm used to 4-part harmony, but this is 16-part harmony.
I can't.
Not anything we have heard.
We were walking into this building, and it's on the outside of the building, which I'll call the throne room building. There was all these carvings of God's creation, everything that God has created. The different plants, different animals, different solar systems, different galaxies. Those were all on the side of this building, and of course, it's a big building. So there's a lot to put on there, but we got to go inside, and these doors just opened up for us. I think the idea from we go to a grocery store. It doesn't sound like a big deal. You go into a grocery store and the doors open up for you. Well, I think the idea for that came from heaven. I think the idea for a lot of things that we experience here on earth came from heaven. These doors just automatically opened, and we walked in, and we're talking about the throne room now. So the throne room doors automatically open for people. Okay, it's not like you got to pass a guard. It's not like you've got to show an ID. God's very open. God's embracing. God wants us to come into his presence. So those doors open up. So we walk into this throne room, and the entry into the throne room is amazing. There's gold, there's silver, there's jewels, there's, the floor is gold. It's just incredible. It's almost, it's hard to imagine. If I could paint a picture, I would, but I'm not sure I could imagine all the detail that I would need to be there. So anyway, we get into the throne room, and it's just the most. You can feel the love, you can feel the warmth, you can feel the security. You feel this. Get this whole thing all over heaven. But when you're really right there in the presence of the Lord, it's amplified. It's so much greater. So we're walking in, and Marzuka kneels down and pushes me forward. So I go on up, and I'm not really sure how far to go. So I get probably 15 feet from these. There's like 7 steps that lead up to this area where these 2 thrones are. And on one throne is God the Father, and he's a bright light. Okay, I couldn't make out a bodily form, but he's light. And then next to him in the throne was Jesus sitting there. And behind the thrones, I saw a big rainbow. I saw there was lightning. And when God spoke, when we walked in a little bit, I heard this thundering sound. And I of course, I first thought it was thunder. And then as I kept listening, I heard God the Father say, "Welcome to heaven, Steve." So in his voice sounds like thunder, but you can actually understand the words when you listen. And then I saw on one side of this, I'll call it a stage, was the menorah and was the Ark of the Covenant. And I saw the thrones of the 24 elders.
Okay, now did you hear any choir or angels singing?
Oh, yeah, there's music all over heaven. There's a lot of praise and worship music. If you're talking about the throne room, and specifically, there were angels flying around at the top, up above. They were all flying around. I don't know. I didn't really count because, I'm in the presence of Jesus and God the Father, and my attention is pretty much drawn to them because everything else just kind of seems to fall away. But I do know that there were angels flying around and they were worshiping the Lord.
I was immediately on the backside of the throne of God. I was immediately transported there, and there was an angel behind me. A bit, I could tell it was overshadowing, although I didn't turn all the way to look at his face. I could tell his presence was there. And the strangest thing was seeing the throne of God from the backside were these staircases. And there were two staircases, and I don't know why it was like this for me, but they were golden staircases, and there was this giant mound. And on the top of the giant mound, in the front of it, was this giant pillar of fire. I mean, huge, and it reminds me of something I saw at the NRB, and I've used this graphic. It's the only time I've ever seen anything drawn was like this pillar of fire, and I think it's going to be on the front of my book. I'm writing about this. Was that the pillar was at least a half a mile, maybe a mile wide, and really high up, and God the Father is in this fire, in this throne of glory. And some people will say, was it just fire? And I was going to say, well, it's glorious. And yes, it looks like fire, but there was also lightning. And the entire around the throne of God is glorious. It's colorful and beautiful. Well, this mound was like a living mound. The sides of it were like living color, and it was moving. It's hard to explain, but it was like a beautiful turquoise and jasper and greens and blues that were flowing, and it was gorgeous and white. It was illuminating and beautiful. So we're going up these stairs, and the odd thing for me was the stairs for me were like human width and girth, the up and down of the stairs. Same thing for the angel, except they were big steps. And I don't know why, but I was floating and he was floating. We weren't even, walking, stepping. We were floating up the stairs. And we get about 3/4 of the way up. And the scripture talks about the 4 living creatures. They are creatures. They are other beasts, like some people call them cherubims or seraphims. They are creatures, living creatures is what the Bible calls them. And they have 4 faces. There's the ox or cow or whatever you want to call it, the eagle, the human face, and the lion face. Well, the lion came down, and I think he flew through the fire of God. He was on fire, and he was huge. His face was like, bigger than a normal lion. He was a huge lion. And the mane was like flowing fire. If you can imagine living fire that's not burning, but living. It's so glorious. It's so unbelievable. It's other world. You can't see hardly anything like that in this life. And so he roars at me, and when he does, the fire hits my face. And I thought for sure I'm going to hell. I'm going to hell. I've done something wrong, and because I've always had, as a corner of my DNA, the fear of the Lord as a firm foundation. And I take Paul's word serious, to prepare yourself, knowing therefore the terror of the Lord we persuade men, he says. And anyhow, I was there, and I heard telepathically the lion said, no one approaches this throne unclean. And when he said that, I thought, am I unclean? Am I unclean? And then all of a sudden he flies back around, and I'm able to just terrain up over the edge of to where the banister is. There's like this golden banister, but you can go through where the stairs are. And I barely just saw the flat crystal sea, and I could tell there were chairs out there, and then boom, I was gone. I just saw it for just moments.
These people died and saw Jesus face to face. Click the video now to hear these 7 powerful encounters.